right, so we're here on Water Management District property. This is the St. Johns River Water Management District. They have a large section that's basically the St. Johns River watershed, and they're an agency of the state. They actually have taxing authority, so they're a little different than a traditional state agency. But we're here with Paul Hudson. Paul actually graduated in 1997 as a forestry major, and he's been with the district basically ever since. And then Chris Kinslow. Chris graduated in, sorry, you just told me this.
08.
08, there we go. And then earned your master's degree in 17.
In 17.
And been with the district for the last 6 years. Was with Ordway Preserve before that. Well, so we're standing here looking at the difference between some hardwood management that was done with a chipping crew. Paul, you want to talk about what's behind us over here?
Yeah, we have a contrast between two thinning operations. So both sides of the road, it's the same age class of slash pine. Behind us, we thinned about 2 years ago. On the other side behind you, we thinned in 2019. The difference, we were able to do a hardwood harvest after the pine thinning behind you. And so we have a good contrast of what the results look like. This site behind you looked the same as the site behind me. It had the same amount of hardwood. This thinning wraps around this stand, and so we were able to remove the hardwood. The guys that manage this property will continue to burn and manage hardwood sprouts with foliar applications.
And that's chemical as well as fire, potentially.
Chemical as well as fire.
Yeah.
And so this, at some point, will be a good site for species conversion. We'll convert to longleaf. It's a little bit of a sand hill. The reason we did not go ahead and convert to longleaf was we wanted to utilize the slash pine canopy for the needle cast and to continue to burn and enhance the ground cover and control hardwood sprouts. We could have clear cut it now and planted longleaf, but I think that would have set us back with the ability to continue to burn. Sometimes when you go through that conversion process, you lose the fuels to continue with a good contiguous burn. This way, with the existing slash pine canopy, I think we can continue with the fire as we've been doing so. There's been a number of burns on both of these stands. How many burns, Chris?
So this stand beyond Paul was burned in June of this year, and there's been about 3 total burns on this stand over the past 10 years. This stand over here was burned in February, and there's also been about 3 burns previous.
And prior to the 10 years ago, it had been burned probably 2 more times. So a total of 5 times behind us, and probably the same amount on behind you, Chris.
Basically, when you inherited this was slash pine plantation managed by Industrial Timber Group. Basically, it was Plum Creek at the time, which is now Weyerhaeuser
GP
ground kind of thing. But GP at the time, even so before that, yeah. And so it was, reasonably high density slash pine young plantation. You came in and you did a first thinning that was a row thinning, 5th row thinning?
5th row thinning in 2005.
And then with logger select.
Logger select.
In between kind of thing, to open it up.
Yeah.
That probably allowed you to get some fire in there shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
And then since then you've done a second thinning on both sides of the road.
Second thinning on both sides, yes.
But you had a pretty good amount of hardwood coming in on this side over here.
Correct.
And so you did a special, and in class we talked about it as a chipping crew, but it's a fuel wood crew is another term for it basically, where they're basically making chips that are going into, in this case, they're going into probably the GRU biomass plant.
Yes. This one's
Yeah. Although they might go into a pulp mill potentially as well, especially for boiler fuel, that kind of stuff.
So it was the hardwood fuel wooding was revenue generating in 2019 on the stand behind you. They did that, it was M.A. Rigoni, they did it with 2 separate crews. So they thinned the pine first. And this, by the way, this was a logger select second thinning and not marked. They did that with their pine thinning crew, and then once the
Kind of
thinning
a
was
standard
done,
hill crew, basically.
standard hill
Correct.
crew, and then they came in afterwards and brought the fuel wood chipping crew in. Now, one of the things they did with the hill crew, when the hill crew had to cut hardwood out of the way to get to the pine, they stacked that. They were careful as to how they placed that hardwood, so the fuel wood crew could grab it and
Come
chip
later.
it. And if they actually piled any of it, it's important as to how it's piled. It can't be jackstraw. It has to be stacked, linear and stacked, so it can be grabbed and fed into the chip. And so they were careful with that.
And the broad objective, obviously, with all this ground, the Water Management District's focused on water supply, aquifer recharge kind of issues. But it's also good habitat, and it's, good ecological condition, recreational use. You guys have a pretty wide mandate on a lot of different services that come off of this. And so you're sort of trying to use all those different tools, different techniques to sort of try to make this into satisfying all those demands simultaneously. And you're generating revenue at the same time.
Right.
And that revenue goes back into the district?
It goes back into our operation budget in land resources. And so it goes back into that budget to continue to do projects. I'm not really privy to how the budget works, but it goes back into our budget.
And so that theoretically allows you to do other things and do other treatments, do other
Allows us
activities.
to do road maintenance for one. On this road in particular we're standing on, there's some extensive road maintenance being done on this road. We had some significant erosion problems the past few years. We maybe will get a chance to get some footage of that as we progress around the sill area. It allows us to do seed collecting, like you saw Chris setting up this morning.
For ground cover restoration, wiregrass seed collection.
Yeah, collecting bunch grass seed today across the highway on the other property to be able to come back and spread that seed on site. Sours, burning, fuel trucks, fire-related equipment, fire suppression equipment, brush trucks for prescribed fire. Everything we do,
All right, so we're standing in an area that's recently had longleaf planted on it, sort of a restoration approach.
That's right.
And I'll let you take it from here, Chris, but it's with slash pine plantation, and now as you look at it, man, it's beautiful in terms of a lot of bunch grass, a lot of wiregrass coming back in. How'd you take it from slash pine plantation to where it is now?
Sure. So going further back, this area in the 70s was windrowed as far as site prep. And there were a series of windrows about 2 to 4 foot high, about 20, 30 feet wide, every 2 chains. And that was all just mineral soil, just piled up. There were some hardwoods in it. So over time, there was a desire to do hydrologic restoration to the site, to restore that sheet flow by removing these windrows. Also at that time, there was a lot of erosion on several of our roads. So we were able to get a contractor to remove the windrows, remove that material from the windrows, and at the same time start hauling that material to build up the roads on Lockalusa to prevent that erosion, and then subsequently cap it with coquina and lime rock. So that's one part of the project. So we restored hydrology to a site. We remedied hydrologic erosion also on the property, and from there we were left with about 10 acres, 12 acres of bare sand where the windrow footprint was. We partnered with Camp Landing to do some seed collection, some wiregrass, just kind of bulk seed collection. Bartered with them to do some mechanical mowing on some of their fire lines. Just with it was a Fecon machine at the time, but just a rotary drum mower. about a week's worth of that for what ended up being about 110 pounds of seed. We dissed that site just with a fire line harrow, just to break up those footprints, because there was a lot of traffic from the dump trucks, from the excavators.
Compaction, basically.
Compaction, exactly. Just to fluff that soil up, and then we use a grasslander which is a bulk seeding machine. So it's essentially has hoppers. You dump the seed in. It has little tines that go on that, and then it's like drain tube, like 4-inch PVC tubes, where the seed just floats on down through it, and behind it is a series of just tires, just rubber tires, and that compacts the seed in. So we had several
Good
passes
seed
on
to
that.
dirt contact at
Exactly.
that point.
So it's sort of like farming. Like there's an aspect of restoration that has very agricultural roots. And this was all 2016, 2020 now. You can see all of this is wiregrass. It was around 10 pounds an acre, 10 pounds of wiregrass is bulk seed per acre. We also mixed in some lopsided Indian grass at about 2 pounds an acre. There was some earlier.
Right here,
Some right by Paul.
Yep.
That's just what's left of it. All that we actually harvested the lopsided this year for use at another restoration site here. So the babies are making babies.
Yeah,
the restoration cycle. So this site was then burned last June, but before then, sorry, just to go back a little bit more, it was seeded in 2016 and then planted with longleaf in late 2016. Actually, I think it might have been January of 2017 was when this site was planted with longleaf, and they're doing pretty good. We got a fair amount of height, but not atypical. Where there's some that are still sort of in the grass stage, to some that are already kind of bolting over 6 feet tall. We did do a site prep burn before it was planted with the longleaf, and these windrows are still very minerally, so it was a very spotty burn.
Right.
We also did some herbicide treatments to control some hardwoods. We used a chemical called Velpar L hexazinone, a liquid hexazinone treatment with a metered gun. So it was about 6 milliliters of solution per stem of DBH for the targeted species, mainly laurel oaks and sand live oaks. We used a contractor, and there was all backpack work. We used a contractor, and they were very good at being able to leave some of the blue jack oak and the turkey oaks around. So we still have those
Really be specific on the species.
Exactly, the true sandhill oak components. And our plan with this is just to keep burning it. About every 2 years, keep burning it. And it was great to see just a kind of a combination of things really come together to do some good resin.
And so you planted this in longleaf, and what was your planting density?
It was 508 trees per acre.
And what was your survival establishment stocking then after that?
It was, I believe it was about 90% when we did it was
about 450, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, it ended up being about 450. So they turned out pretty well. And
no, you've got a nice spread through here. Containerized seed.
They are containerized
seedlings.
Hand planted.
Hand planted. Okay, that was going to be my question. Yeah. And Florida Forest Service nursery. Where'd you get the seedlings?
Was it Blanton's?
Okay.
This was not Florida. The other side is Florida Forest Service.
Blanton's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got a couple different nurseries that you use for these kind of.
Use, Blanton's, Meeks.
Okay.
And we'll use Florida Forest Service. Nurseries.
Depending on what you're doing. Yeah.
But all containerized. Almost all hand planted. I don't think we've done a machine planting in over a decade.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And when you're doing longleaf, are you pretty much doing all containerized at this point?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You've gone totally away from the
I don't think we
bare root stuff.
I think the couple times that we've done slash pine, I think it'd be bare root seedlings.
We've done some bare root longleaf, but that's probably been 12, 15 years.
Pretty rare at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a must mechanical if you're going to do bare root longleaf. It has to be done mechanically. It cannot be hand planted.
Mm-hmm.
Not successful at all. Just due to the root structure. So long, you cannot get that. You can't make a hole with a dibble bar and get it through. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, longleaf bare root is especially true.
yeah.
Basically. Yeah. So you're gonna burn this every 2 years.
Like,
That's the intention kind of thing. And then where do you see it going from there? Are you gonna have to have another intervention? Are you gonna?
I seriously, I hope not. I'll
Okay.
say. So
Yeah.
there's the slash pine that's kind of on the horizon.
Mhm.
That's up for thinning here soon.
Oh, okay.
But the understory there is in really good shape.
Yeah.
Because it's been kind of encompassed with this unit as
Right.
far as burning.
What do you perceive with future hardwood treatments?
Yeah, hardwood treatments, I'm hoping that it's just going to be just fire. At
Yeah.
this point, we've gotten to a certain amount of density. I'm happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
The trees are becoming
Should be.
established.
Yeah.
We have a ground cover component that can support contiguous fire.
Mm-hmm.
I see very little. I think
Mm-hmm.
fire is going to be the
Main tool from
component
here. Yeah.
for oak management and also pine tree management.
Yeah, right.
So,
You've got evidence of that behind you. I'm looking at
Yeah.
looking at one stem,
Yeah.
one sapling, one hardwood sapling that's hurting,
Mm-hmm.
and I see one that's dead. So
Yeah.
got pretty good control.
yeah, it was a
Mhm.
good fire.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So this is basically what that site that we just looked at with the young longleaf looked like before the restoration treatments were done. So you've got 30 plus year old slash pine plantation that slash pine was not a good choice for that site. Just too dry a site for slash pine to do well on. And you also look around, you can see the amount of hardwood that's come into this site, the amount of hardwood that's sort of, coming in and taken over. This actually has had some fire on it here recently, but it didn't have the harvest of the overstory that occurred in the previous site. It also didn't have the fuel wood, the chipping operation that came in and kind of cleaned this stuff out, or the herbicide application for that matter. And so you're sort of trying to get a pre-post kind of condition. This is what it looked like before all those activities took place, all those different processes that we talked about. Yeah, and then the other side obviously is what it looks like when you've done that. All right, so well, Chris, tell us about this site.
All right, so
Yeah.
this area is one of the sand hills on Lockalusa. It was side prepped and planted in 1996 with longleaf, and the side prep was chopping. And from kind of then forward, there was no chemical on the site prep. From then forward to about 2016, there really wasn't anything done to the site. So much of it looked kind of like what's behind us, where you can kind of see some longleaf.
Pretty rough though.
Yeah, rough, thick, dominant with
Hardwood
hardwoods,
midstory,
like
hardwood understory.
1,500 stems an acre. Significant hardwood component, mainly sand live oak, and some laurels, and a little bit of waters. And there are some ponds that have sweet gum around them.
Yeah.
But by and large, it was oaks. And our initial thought was to come in here and do pellet hexazinone because it is such a
Like a Velpar.
Yeah, no,
Granular
exactly.
Velpar
A
or
granular
something.
Velpar, because it is such a sandy site that stuff seems to work really good in this type. North Virginia arose to do an agreement with the Gainesville Renewable Energy Center to supply wood for them. So chipping crew came on. It was Ward, Chad Ward.
The biomass harvest.
Biomass
basically.
harvest,
Chipping
exactly.
crew with a biomass harvest.
Yes, exactly. So, and that fits so well because as opposed to herbicide or maybe trying to mulch all this stuff, all that material is gone. Like you're not left with a bunch of snags. You're not left with
It's out of the way.
material. Exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully looking to burn it here soon.
And that's what we're looking at behind
Yes,
here is
exactly.
post treatment.
It's post treatment, and so you see there are definitely sprouting. There was a triclopyr treatment that we did a year afterwards, so let them kind of bust out.
Yeah, get some foliage to absorb.
Exactly. So hopefully we'll get to burn it this year. If not, we'll try and do another herbicide treatment
coming up probably in August. A challenge for this site is that there's an eagle's nest kind of on the other side of this, so our burning window is very limited. Exactly.
Right.
So it's essentially from October 15th to May 15th. No real burning. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And then after that, it opens up a little bit more. But this site is kind of part of a larger site that has to be included in an area. It's about 850 acres total, with a prairie in the middle of it.
Yeah.
On the other side of where we're essentially on the other side of where we were earlier. The chipping crew did a really good job trying to leave as much longleaf as they could, and we were all kind of surprised at how much was left.
We're still here.
Yeah,
Right, sure.
exactly.
So that would have been what, 20?
That was 20 years.
20 years after. Yeah. So that longleaf is all 20 years.
Is all 20 years old.
Yeah.
And we're interested in kind of seeing what happens because there's a lot of seed.
Yeah.
On
Cone
them.
production. Yeah.
So I'm interested in seeing how they fill in.
You may start to see a little natural regeneration.
Exactly.
Fill in the gaps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people like this because it already has kind of an uneven
Mixed
age.
age, uneven age feel.
Exactly. With doing nothing but.
Well, and it's
the
impressive
opportunity.
actually. I mean, just
Yeah.
looking at it from here, how much of the grass is still
I know.
in the understory.
I know, exactly.
Even after the chipping crew's been through it, and it was sitting there for 20
It
years.
was dark.
Yeah.
Like I mean, you're not getting barely any light penetration through that.
So in general, so in the class we talk about 6 different mechanical techniques, and I think so far we've talked about mulching, mowing, mulching.
Yeah.
We've talked about chopping. Talked about disking.
Yeah.
Scalping. Scalping.
In the past we have. Yeah.
Mostly old pasture stuff. I would
Exactly.
say.
Exactly.
Okay.
To break it up.
And then what's the one I'm forgetting? Oh, raking.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
raking
Do
around
spot
after-
raking and stuff
yeah.
like that.
And then bedding.
We don't
do
barely
bedding.
do bedding.
Yeah.
It really doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. But you do obviously herbicide application.
Yeah.
You've done backpack application. Obviously, you've done ground application herbicide. Done aerial.
Aerials
application?
we have. There was initially on those windrows.
Oh, okay.
The initial was an aerial application of Velpar.
Yeah.
And it did okay. It actually knocked out a bunch of the hardwoods before we even
Just
started.
mechanical end.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it gave us a good foothold with that. And what they did to prepare those windrows was to rake the top of the windrows.
Yeah,
So
right.
so they raked the windrows, spread that material out.
Yeah.
Did a little bit of spot raking,
Yeah.
and then the subsequent site prep burn, and then the acreage burn.
Yeah.
Really took care of what
Yeah,
was
right.
left.
Yeah.
So.
And then, and obviously you're doing fire kind
Yeah,
of thing. So
yeah.
out of the tools that we've talked about, there's one that you really aren't using. Basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
and that just kind of goes along with some of the.
How quickly will you come
Sites.
back in and treat these hardwoods?
So if we're not able to burn it,
Okay.
and we'll know
Yeah.
relatively soon.
Okay.
It's already budgeted
Okay.
for August. I
Okay.
don't want it to go another another growing season.
Without it.
Yeah, exactly. We had it budgeted for this year, but honestly, with COVID, we had a bunch of contractors fall out.
Sure.
And so we've actually restructured our contracting mechanism to where we have a pool now, as opposed to we're just relying on 2 contractors.
Right.
So,
Makes sense.
hey, yeah, we're trying to get it.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.